but we're hoping everybody shares the stream. You could share it right from our YouTube channel onto your channel. And then any channel who does that, and I'm obviously, looks like you guys are on board, which is fantastic. We look forward to it. You guys can, we're going to have people of the different channels sign on throughout the day because we're going to be live for about 10 hours. So we're going to have time for everybody to come in and do a guest spot, talk for a half hour about what they think, how it's going, brainstorm it. So that's the goal. That's the goal, is to get as many channels as possible on board. We're trying to get 1 million views for this conference between all the different channels, and we think we could do that if we build it out. And what I think is really exciting about this is I think it's kind of a relaunch for a left that was sort of left out in the cold after the 2 Bernie campaigns and really silenced throughout the Biden years. I think this is a great opportunity to relaunch. Kshama is a socialist. She insists that Workers Strike Back, well, she's a socialist, is not a socialist organization per se. There's no ideological litmus test to join. They have certain demands around wages and anti-discrimination practices and things like that, which are all good. But beyond that, it's not a socialist or a communist organization. It's a workers' organization. It's a labor movement. And the thing about Kshama that you could say for her that you can't say for most left organizers is she's a winner. She wins. She was able to not only get elected to the Seattle City Council, but keep her seat and actually win real gains for working people in a city dominated by Amazon, Starbucks, and Microsoft. That ain't easy. That takes chops to be able to do that, and she has them. And so I'm really excited about that. And I think it's an exciting opportunity. And I think, for all the fears about what the next 4 years have in store for us, and I don't minimize those at all, I ultimately do think this is a more favorable landscape for left organizing than if Kamala had won.
I do too.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that is our future. That is what we have to do. And it was always part of the mission, because even when Jen was running, we always said that the change is going to come through labor. We tried to push it through labor, but unfortunately, there is still a significant amount of corruption within the union infrastructure. Even people that are high up within the organization who wanted to lend a hand to Jen, there is a certain level of attachment that a lot of them still have to the Democratic Party. And until we recognize that the best movements that have been out there, the Sunrise Movement, Climate Defiance, there have been these groups that have made some really strong appeals and even gains to an extent. But the second they locked arms with the Democratic Party, that was the end of it. It was over. Dead on arrival, and they were never the same. So if Workers Strike Back is legit, which I believe they are, and they are working outside of the two-party system and especially outside of the Democratic Party, then this is not only a group that's going to go places, but is also worth contributing to financially so that they can build their infrastructure. Because at some point, the people in elected office are going to be scared shitless of the power that labor will bring to the table.
Well, absolutely. And that I can promise you, that Kshama Sawant is as adversarial as could possibly be towards the Democratic Party. There's absolutely zero chance that she will be sheepdogged back into the Democratic Party. I would bet my life on that. When she was a Seattle City Councilwoman, it was the Democratic Party that tried to recall her. I mean, the Republican Party really has no power in Seattle. It's a pretty liberal city. So she fought Democrats. At the time, Bezos supported mostly Democrats. Now everybody's kissing Trump's ring. But yeah, so there's no chance of that whatsoever. It was Kshama Sawant who really organized the coalition between the Green Party and the Abandon Harris movement, if you remember. So there was the Uncommitted movement, which kind of became the Sunrise movement of the Muslim resistance to Biden. They didn't officially fold, but they basically did, right? They started releasing anti-Trump ads and saying don't vote for third parties. But the other branch of that was the Abandon Harris movement, which were, mostly Muslim and Arab organizers from in and around Dearborn, Michigan, who boycotted the Democratic ticket with the explicit intent of tanking the Democratic Party in Michigan and therefore nationally. And, Kshama's a great organizer. So she sort of merged Abandon Harris with the Green Party and Workers Strike Back. And the founder of Abandon Harris, Hassan Abdel Salam, is going to be at this conference too, as I understand. And so she's a coalition builder. She's a team builder. And to have Hassan there is great too, because, building a labor movement doesn't mean every demand is labor oriented. For instance, to have someone there who put everything on the line to boycott the genocide ticket of Harris Waltz means something. And you had electricians unions come out for ceasefires, very, very early on into this genocide. So working people are more based than we give them credit for. And it's just a matter of organizing them and bringing them together. And Kshama's the best in the business at that. Certainly the best who's not going to end up folding back into the Democratic Party. So it's exciting.
Let me ask you, do you know anything about the group that's generalstrikeus.com? Do you know?
I don't know that one, no.
Okay, so I hadn't heard of it. I went there today and looked at it, and there's a whole bunch of partners that they have listed there. And it's everything ranging from people doing strike funds and all sorts of stuff. And one of the people, Peter, was Rebecca Parsons, is one of the partners on this group. And so I feel like all of these things need to kind of coalesce. But
Agreed.
This organization, so it's called generalstrikeus.com. I don't know if anybody out there knows anything about this or who's involved. There's nothing on there that says specifically who's doing it, but all of the partner groups are like good. So I actually sent them an email, but this sounds like the kind of thing that should be coordinated. I think that we definitely need to start having general strike funds.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that was just Rebecca's thing, is having her GoFundMe was attached to it for a general strike fund. But that's the concept that we need to be kind of working on universally, because even though I do think labor needs to be the impetus, I think that because of where we are in labor in this country, clearly that's not sufficient. It's going to have to be everybody coinciding with labor. And so therefore we need to have some funding, like resources and stuff. So everyone needs to coalesce.
And
Yes,
speaking of,
sorry, go ahead.
what I was just going to say, Keaton, is that, and especially in a place like Washington State and in Seattle, when you think about single-payer healthcare, that's where a group like Whole Washington should be looking to coalesce with a group like Workers Strike Back.
Yeah, what it requires is the courage to break from the Democratic Party. That's what it requires on a lot of these other groups, because a lot of these other groups, they sound great on paper, their policy is great, but they get cold feet when they are faced with the fear of having no power. And this is why I'm insistent that Trump winning was ultimately, in the long run, a good outcome for the left, because I think it's going to be easier for a lot of these organizations to break off from the Democrats, because guess what, sweetheart, if you're afraid of not having power, guess what? Democrats have no power now, and they're not going to have any power for a long time. So you really got nothing to lose by taking a chance on something outside the system, which is what it absolutely, where it absolutely has to come from. And the idea of a general strike is you make these demands, and like you said, Jen, it's labor based, but not necessarily labor exclusive, in the sense that one of these demands coming out of a general strike should be, in my opinion, must be defund Israel. We're having a general strike where, we're getting 100 million people to not show up to work, and we're not showing up to work anymore until Israel aid is out of the budget, period. Fuck
How
you.
about
That's
medical
it.
debt? How about no more medical debt?
No, I'm saying among the list of demands. Right,
That's
exactly.
One
Yeah.
of our demands. One of
Of
our
course.
demands. Yeah.
So that's what the idea is of an opportunity like this, where they're having a conference where we really get to brainstorm, okay, around which ideas do we organize? Around which demands do we organize? We need to come up with a list of demands so that sometime in the future, I would love for it to happen by 2028. An election year is the best time to do this.
May
because that's-
1st, May 1st, 2028, general strike.
Yeah, because that's when you exert the most pressure on the system. That's when the longshoremen decided to drop the hammer. They said, they waited till October, and they're like, give us the money or we're going to fuck you up right before Election Day. So that's the time to do it. You can't just call for it overnight. You need an organized workforce, but that has to be the goal. And look, Democrats and Republicans both need an economy to preside over, right? Like, they wield no power if the economy doesn't function. Donald Trump signed the CARES Act when COVID happened. In a crisis, these people will cave. In a crisis, they'll fold. We just have to create a crisis, and workers have to create a crisis. And this is the main problem, of the last several decades, is workers have been browbeaten and brainwashed into feeling like they're bad people for exerting pressure on the system. They're not supposed to exert pressure on the system. They're supposed to take what the boss gives them and be happy with it. And we have to organize to say, no, you want your country to function, it's going to function on our terms, or it's going to shut down. And a very important point, Jen, what you said is you need a general strike fund because you need a mutual fund, a mutual aid fund to sort of pull people through that. Not everybody could afford to just go without for 3 months if there's a general strike. So you need a pool that people can draw from. So if they need money for rent, they can get through it and stay on strike and not cross the picket line.
And that's also the thing that makes Kshama such a unique figure in this whole thing, because I think most people do trust her. And she would be the type of person where if she started a general strike fund, that people would actually entrust her to give money to, because you see how many scam organizations are out there. They're completely ill-intended. They say they're doing one thing, they do something completely different. But I really think in a lot of ways we could be thankful for what a absolute colossal fuck up Kamala's campaign was, and how it really got exposed for the absolute grift that the Democratic Party establishment is infinitely worse than the Republican Party. I mean, you thought it was bad when Hillary outraced Trump by more than 2-1. Kamala outraced Trump 3-1, and that was within a few months. So it really goes to show you how it's all about just washing this money. And if we're going to put our money, especially the limited money that a lot of people have, into something that they can believe in, I would say that something that Kshama is in charge of is definitely something worth doing.